The Porsche Sport Podcast, powered by Porsche Centre Leeds. Test drive the new Porsche Taycan and experience soul electrified.
Hi, it's Kevin Estre.
It's Jörg Bergmeister.
It's Larry Ford.
It's Timo Bernhard.
And you're listening to the Porsche Sport Podcast
with Peter MacKay
and Haley Edmonds.
Hello and welcome to the Porsche Sport Podcast, the show about all things Porsche in motorsport. Today is a very special episode because we have a special guest joining us all the way from Boulder, Colorado. And we've got, well, let's be honest, we've got racing royalty joining us today. Loni Unser, welcome to the show.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here today.
Well, it is absolutely our pleasure. Now, Loni, we've got so much we want to ask you, but I want to dive straight in and talk about your Pikes Peak program for this year, because last season you were racing door-to-door, banging doors in Mazda MX-5s in the IMSA paddock, and now you're on this lonely time trial up a big mountain in Colorado. I mean, tell us about the decision process of thinking, right, I want to go and give Pikes Peak a go.
So it was pretty funny because last year, ironically, I didn't have anything going on this time during the hill climb. And so I was like, I never had gone to the Pikes Peak hill climb before last year. And for some reason, I was just like, I'm just going to go. I'm going to go up. I just went by myself and I parked at the bottom. I went to the start line and I spent the day up there. And throughout that day, I decided what I wanted to be doing at that exact moment, 365 days from then. So it was just incredible. The atmosphere was just something so special, something that you can't replicate. And so I just fell in love, really. It had always been on my mind because people would always ask me, Loni, are you going to do the hill climb? And I was always kind of like, well, if somebody gives me a car, gives me a program, says, here you go, Loni, go do it, then I would have done it. But I would have never really seeked it out to do myself before then, until last year. And so I'm just really excited to be up there this year driving, and driving in the Porsche GT4 is going to be amazing as well.
I bet. Now, as you mentioned, it's in racing, not many people just pick up the phone and offer you something. There's a lot of hustle involved, no matter who you are or what you've done in your career. I mean, tell us about you drive home. I'm sure your mind was going at 100 miles an hour driving home from Pikes Peak last year, saying, right, how are we going to do this? Well, tell us, how did you go about it? Who were the first people you called? How did you put the deal together?
Yeah. So last year on my way home, I was like, okay, we need to start doing this. And somebody who really helped me was Bob Boileau. And his son, Tommy, has run the hill climb for many years. And he was really the one to help connect me with people and to get this idea out the door. And he was really excited about it. And I was excited about it. So it kind of started with them. And then we talked to Eric Skurmatz with Porsche Motorsports North America. And he was the one who then really helped get the whole program together.
I see. So we've got, and the car looks fantastic in the classic red and black of Advan and Yokohama. When did they come into the picture? Because they're a brand that are so engaged with Pikes Peak. I mean, we had David Donoghue on the show, and he was telling us about their passion and how important their impact is on his program. I mean, for you, how did Yokohama become involved, and what's their kind of impact on how things go?
I'm super excited to have Yokohama on board this year, and I think the car turned out fantastic. I'm really, really excited to run the Yokohama Advan AO52 tires because they're kind of the perfect tire for the hill climb. They are DOT street legal tires, and they are great in the rain and in the dry. So as many of you guys know, you never know what's going to happen while you're on your run. You may start off with a dry run and then halfway through get torrential downpours. So it's really kind of the perfect tire because a lot of people are on slicks, and it's hard when you're on slicks if it starts raining, because driving on slicks is one of the scariest things that you could do. So anyways, really excited to have them, because they're a huge partner of the class itself. That's kind of how I got connected with them, is I knew them that way. And, they have a ton of really cool cars up there this year, and not just my own and the other Cayman GT4s, but they have many cool cars up there, and they're just super excited about it. I think they like it for the intensity of what the Pikes Peak Hill Climb is.
I bet. I mean, we talked about when we had David on the show, and he talked about just the constant game with the tires of like going from like the bottom of the mountain to or the sort of bottom of the mountain right to the top. I mean, how much is the tire changing over that incredible climb in altitude, and how does it affect the performance of the car? I know it's still very early days for you, but what have your experience has been so far?
So my experience so far has been really quite great. I mean, your first runs, you have to be very aware that you are on a cold tire. So that's going to play a huge role when we go out for race day. When we go off the line, we're going to have a relatively cold tire. But another thing that's nice about these tires is I found they warm up relatively quickly. Like, we don't have to worry about them quite so much. So and they're super consistent. So throughout the 3 test days, we didn't even fully go through one set of tires. So they last a long time. And at least in terms of driving, they're very predictable and very nice to drive. So I think it's going to be a great setup for the race this year.
Very exciting indeed. I mean, how much experience have you had on the mountain so far? There's been a few teams up testing on the at Pikes Peak. How much mileage have you had so far on the mountain itself? And what I'd love to know is what are your first impressions of this crazy place?
Yeah, I have had I had last weekend, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. We did the lower section, then the middle, then the top. So you can do it in different sequences, but it was perfect the way we did it because it was kind of a progression, and we learned the flow of the mountain a little bit. So those were the 3 days I've had, and they were incredible. I had tears in my eyes coming down from the middle section and the W's, because the W's are what's iconic to Pikes Peak. And I was just thinking on my way down about my family and my family history. And the fact that I get to do this is so incredible. And, there's no race like this in the entire world. I mean, this is the iconic race, and it's so challenging, but yet what I've found is really cool about this race is, unlike others, people rally together to help you. Like, if you need anything, and so far it's been this way, people jump on to help you. It's just a really neat atmosphere. I think people want to win when other people are also at their best, which I think is definitely unique to other racing series.
Yeah, it seems so. That seems so consistent to all of your fellow competitors that I've spoke to. That camaraderie is so important. I mean, mentorship is also a big thing for rookies going to Pikes Peak. Mentorship is probably something you've not been short of in your life when it comes to racing. What does who have your mentors been for this process, and what have they taught you?
Yeah, so Porsche Trophy by Yokohama has Jeff Swart as our coach. Mm-hmm. So we are insanely lucky because the first time I got in the car with Jeff and drove the mountain, I was blown away by the knowledge that Jeff has about the mountain. He knows every rock on the mountain. Like, it's insane. And that takes years and years and years to gain that knowledge. So I'm really extremely lucky because he's pointed out things that, I wouldn't have picked up on my own, different little tricks here and there. Like, we have some tricks for guardrails and knowing what corner it is. And so it's just been so cool to learn from him. And then, of course, my dad is my biggest supporter, my best friend, and, is there with me throughout the entire thing, giving me advice. And, I'm always leaning on my dad. And then my Uncle Robbie. He's my dad's cousin, but I call him my uncle. He has helped me throughout my career, but it was awesome. I called him up as soon as I got off the mountain one of the days, and I was like, Robbie, what are all your tips and advice? And he's like, you just got to go. Like he's pretty intense. And so he's like, you got to go flat everywhere you can and stuff like that. So, when he ran the mountain, it was all dirt, but the guy has some, he just is just all in all the time. And it's so fun to hear from him and learn from him.
And we're lucky. We live in an era of YouTube with endless amounts of onboard videos that you can watch. It certainly, for my preparation as a broadcaster, has been vitally important. I mean, I'm sure you've been studying away the onboards. Who have been some of your favorite drivers to watch onboards with? Who have you been leaning towards on your prep?
I've been pretty much watching Travis Pastrana and Tanner Faust because they ran this car. I think Travis ran in 2019 and Tanner ran last year. Unfortunately, Tanner didn't run to the top, but both of those videos are insanely helpful because it's the same exact car, and they're just legends and icons of the sport themselves. So whatever they're doing, I trust that it's good information.
I think that's a good place to start. That is for sure. I mean, I know, Loni, that you've. I understand that you work with a sim racing equipment supplier, Ritmotech, which is a brand as us as sim racers know well. I mean, how important have you used the sim and to prepare for Pikes Peak, and if so, how important has it been?
The sim is really awesome, and I'm so thankful to have Ritmotech as a huge supporter of mine. And, I think a combination between watching video and then going on the sim is so incredibly valuable. Those two combined, you can't take one without the other. It seems like, you need to, if you use the sim, you need to really take the real life video and kind of meld those two sources of knowledge together, and it gives you a really good idea of what you're going to want to do. So the sim is just great, and it's such a valuable tool to me. So very thankful to have Ritmotech.
Is it now? Tell me, what's better to use? Is it Assetto Corsa or is it Dirt Rally?
I've been using Assetto Corsa.
Okay.
Yes.
So you need to compare notes with David. He uses Dirt Rally.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
Good.
So this
good
is going to be
know.
interesting to see which.
Which is better. Interesting. Yeah.
I'll need to download it on Assetto Corsa and have a go. I've been doing my prep on Dirt Rally and the Audi Quattro. Actually, probably the same Audi Quattro your great uncle Bobby drove. Actually.
Yeah.
I think so.
I heard. Yeah, that's really cool.
in virtual form. I mean, Loni, let's talk a bit about your kind of racing journey in general. I mean, I used to work for my family business, which was something quite different from racing, but still a family business. And the Unser family business is definitely driving fast. I mean, you grew up in a family of racers, but do I understand correctly that you didn't start racing cars? It was a different type of getting to the flag first. Do I understand that correctly?
Yeah, so I grew up in Idaho, and there were no racetracks anywhere near, although I had wished there was so deeply, and my parents knew that. I always asked them to go-karting or go any form of driving. I was begging my parents, but I grew up ski racing. And so I grew up just as a mountain kid, and, getting used to line finding in ski racing is so important. So learning, I kind of started that learning process a little bit earlier, even though I wasn't in a car.
I see. So it was interesting that when I spoke to Zach Robichon, he did the same thing. He was ski racing,
really?
and then went go-karting after that. Yes.
Oh, so interesting.
Indeed, yeah. And his mum, now this thing is, his mum was not very happy when he went go-karting, but I was like, surely go-karting's safer than ski racing. You've done both. Tell us what's safer, going racing or racing in a car or racing on skis?
Ski racing is pretty crazy because you're going so fast and you don't have a roll cage. There are consequences in different ways, but still both really intense sports in themselves, but both wildly fun.
I bet. I mean, so you've done ski racing. When did when did you first make the steps to going racing in cars, to step out of ski racing and stepping into what is a family legacy, which I'm sure you've spoken about millions of times, but how did that come about with getting into car racing?
It's funny because I think my experience was very similar to Zach's in that my parents actually discouraged me from going racing. They knew that I loved the sport, like I was telling you, and I would jump at any opportunity to go to work with my dad. And my dad works for the Road to Indy series. So I'd always, be tagging along with him, kind of being his shadow. And again, they knew I wanted to do it, but they were discouraged me from doing it because they know how challenging the sport is. They know how it would be difficult for a girl and for an Unser, in the sport, because kind of like it has been, eyes are always on me when I go to the racetrack, which I've become used to, and it's totally fine. But, it was always something that was super important, but, they didn't want me to do it. But when I was a senior in high school, my dad came to me and said, Loni, when I was your age, I got a chance to go to a driving school. I think you should go. It'll make you a better driver on the street. And immediately, there was no hesitation with me. I was like, yes, I'm there, of course. So I went to the BMW Performance Driving School in Thermal, California, and absolutely just fell in love even more than I already was. And I can remember sitting at dinner the night after the first day of driving with my dad and said, Dad, I need to go racing. How can we make this work? And, he was like, oh God, what have I done? So but you could tell the gears started turning, and he realized that I wanted to do it badly enough that we can make it happen. And so when I came out to Colorado to go to college, we put together a program racing Spec Miata in the Rocky Mountain region. So it all the rest is kind of history from there. And now, of course, my parents are my biggest supporters, but it's just kind of funny how it all started. People normally don't expect that.
Was your dad in the bad books with your mum when he took you to that driving school? Because did she see all this kind of coming from a mile off when you guys went off there to the driving school, or what did she think of all of this?
Yeah, I think she was thought very similarly to my dad. And nowadays when I'm racing, I think she gets nervous, but she just wants me to do well at the end of the day. And, both of them come out to as many of my races as they possibly can. And that's one thing that I think is so cool about motorsports is it really brings family together. It's such a family oriented sport because, the support needs to be high for the driver.
Mm. Oh, 100%. You're right. It's the thing that always amazes me, Loni, is someone from the outside looking in is the sheer commitment from every competitor and their friends and family. It's the whole, everyone's got to be signed up to it. I mean, tell us a little bit, if I may, continuing a family legacy. There's a lot of drivers who either it's their dad or their older brother or older sister or whatever. For you, it's an entire tree, a family tree going all the way back to the very early days of motorsport. I mean, along your journey, you've achieved a lot in a very short space of time. Along your journey, what have the pluses and minuses been of having a second name like you have? Because I'm sure it has ups, but I'm sure it has downs as well. I mean, in your experience, what's that been like?
You're exactly right. It's a double-edged sword at the end of the day, because I go to the racetrack and all eyes are on me because I'm an Unser. And all of these expectations people have, they expect me to go out of the gate and set the world on fire. And, that's not always the case because I'm learning just as much as the next person next to me, hopefully faster and a little better, but still learning nonetheless. Yeah, it's definitely different. I've come to a really good place with it, though, in that I use it to motivate me and to inspire me. And I just ignore the pressures because it's not worth it to think about these all the time and think about, I'm an Unser, I got to be this or that. I'm just racing for me, and I'm racing to hopefully inspire women and girls come into the sport. And I'm doing it because I love it, not because of any other reason, not because I'm an Unser. That's just an added bonus. So it's definitely interesting. But again, I do take a moment to stop and think how cool it is. Like when I was coming down from the run up the W's, those are the cool moments.
Have you had, I'm sure when you get to race week next week, I'm sure there's going to be plenty. I mean, so far, have you had people coming up to you saying, oh, I remember when your great uncle did this, and I remember when, Bobby did this, and, Al did that. Have you had that yet?
Oh, you're totally right. Yes. Yes. People always come to me and tell me their stories. And I love it because I hear stories that I haven't heard from my family. And so it's just the coolest thing to me when, they're like, oh, I used to watch your uncle's race back in the day or whatever it is. And it makes me happy. And it's like, they were such cool people, and, some of them still are. And none of them had any shortage of personality. So there are so many stories out there that I probably will never learn. But, it's just fun to hear more and more as I go throughout this journey of mine.
Yeah, I think it's awesome. And I think they'll all be super, super proud of you of what you're doing. I mean, coming back to next week, the big race, what are your personal goals of what you want to achieve? Because unlike from the world you've come from, is the Mazda MX-5 Cup in IMSA, which is just like, it's like halfway between chess and bare knuckle boxing. It's crazy where you're all crashing into each other, and it's the Pikes Peak is you and the mountain and the car, and that's it. What are your personal goals in your own mind about what you want to achieve?
I'll just leave it as whenever I'm racing a car, all I want to do is win. So that's all I'm going to say there.
So that would be to win the GT4 Yokohama Cup class.
Yes, that's what I would like. I know it's a very big task to set out there for myself, especially as a rookie, and driving against people who's their second and third years and all of that. But I think I can do it, with enough hard work and dedication. But, also keeping on the mountain is going to be very important. So it's really going to be about finding the fine line between, driving hard, but not too hard, and driving very smart. I think this is a thinking person's game. This is all about, who can think about this in a way that gets them to the top safely, but quickly as well.
And how are you going to get through all these 2 a.m. starts? That sounds horrible to me. For practice every day. That's how are you feeling about that? Yeah,
it's brutal. I experienced it for the first time last weekend, and I was like, whoa, this is unlike anything else. So Jeff has been great. He's just like, you need to be on a different time zone. Just treat it as if you're living in a different time zone. So, just trying to go to bed as early as possible. When I was testing last weekend, one night I went to bed at 6:30. So I think that's just the key, is just to try to get as much sleep in as you can. And otherwise you're just going to be fried by race day.
Yeah, and we can't have that. We can't have that as well. I mean, some of the drivers, or I understand that quite a lot of the drivers run with an oxygen tank in the car. It's not mandatory, but it's optional for the drivers. But have you been using the oxygen tank, or are you happy without it?
I haven't been, because I have grown up at altitude. Like I was kind of saying, I'm kind of a mountain kid. So I'm always in the mountains, always, running around doing fun stuff in the mountains. But that being said, I've been playing with the idea of running it on race day. I didn't find that I needed it on practice days, but I do think it will help you stay sharp as you go up the mountain, especially at the top section. And especially since the top section is kind of the most scary, hard, difficult section on Pikes Peak.
Yeah, interesting. Jeff uses it only on race day.
Yeah. And I think a lot of people do. And I think that's kind of, if I came from sea level, I would be using it every single day. But, being used to it, having my body used to it, I don't really think it'll be a huge thing until race day.
Interesting. It's fascinating to hear each driver has a kind of different approach to it. We had,
I'm sure.
We had Rob Holland on the show, and he's come from a world of doing professional cycling, and so he's just like, I don't use it because they tested his blood, and he made me feel really quite bad. I was like, I would definitely need the oxygen, both from a fitness point of view and an altitude as well, I think, as well. Now, one final question for you, Loni. It's been such a privilege to chat to you and hear about your Pikes Peak program. But I do have one last question for you. If we were to say you could take any Pikes Peak car in history up the mountain, what would it be?
Oh, man. That's a really good question. I don't know. I don't have a specific car for you. However, if I could go back and do it in the dirt, in one of like, maybe like I don't know, one of like the midgets that they used to run up, or one of my family's cars, I think it would be really cool to go up and do it in the dirt.
That's a good answer. I like that one. I was because some of those cars, especially your Uncle Bobby, some of the cars that he drove as well, they looked a handful on that.
Oh yeah. Yeah. My Uncle Robbie said when I talked to him the other day, it's like, man, it's a shame you couldn't run on the death dirt or something like that. He phrased it something like that, like the death slide on the death dirt or something. And it was hilarious. But those days looked insane, and just the photos from those days are incredible, and what a cool thing. But the paved is also awesome. It adds a whole nother element. I think you have to know the road better when it's paved.
I think you're right, yes, because you've not got that. A little bit like I come from the rallying world, and the drivers always talk about you can't make any mistake on tarmac because it's a big one. Whereas on the dirt, you can kind of adjust around.
Absolutely, On the asphalt, you're on the exact limit of grip. Whereas you kind of in the dirt, you get to that limit of grip, you get your slide, and then you know where you are. So the consequences are definitely higher on the asphalt.
Well, Loni, we wish you so much luck next week. I'm very impressed to hear your goal. I think you can achieve it as well. And we'll be cheering you on here at Porsche Sport. Thank you so much for taking the time to chat to us, and all the best of luck next week.
Yeah, thank you so much. It was a pleasure.
The Porsche Sport Podcast, powered by Porsche Centre Leeds. Test drive the new Porsche Taycan and experience soul electrified.